You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to a very special episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kelvin, and with me today are Christos and Mark. Hello, boys. Hey, Christos, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Really good, really good. We're still very much enjoying our heat wave here in the UK, so the vests are on, and I've been getting a nice tan in the back garden today.
I wish I could say the same. It's May gray, June gloom here in San Diego, so we have these 65 to 70 degree days, which are pleasant, but then it's rare that the sun comes out. But then July 1 hits and it's like blowing and going. We're in summer for like 4 months. So
Oh no, Mark, you've already told me offline that Boston weather's a bit crap this week. So brighten us up. What's good about Boston this week?
Hey, Queens.
Hey.
Yes, today is Boston Pride Parade. It's happening today. Last year, sadly, the company that had been sort of putting on all of Boston Pride for decades, kind of because of internal gay squabbles, went defunct. And another company went to take it over, but at that point, it had gone defunct like literally a month or so before Pride was supposed to kick off. So Boston did not have Pride last year for the first time in, I don't know, decades. And this year was the grand return. And I know that there's been all kinds of things set up. I mean, I looked at the agenda. This whole month is packed with all kinds of different events, but the kickoff is the big parade. And usually you go down for the parade to see, the scantily clad, boys waving flags and whatnot and throwing out beads from the floats from the different gay bars and whatnot. But this year, I did not go. My partner Andy is actually working all day today, so he could not attend. So it would have been a little weird to go anyway without him. But then it being 50 degrees, rainy, gray, windy, I was like, I'm not going to trek to downtown Boston for Pride this time. But hopefully next year.
Wow. Well, speaking of Trek Pride, as we said earlier, a very special episode today. We did want to mark the month of June that we've just started as Pride Month internationally, and have a little All Good Things Pride with us today, so we can talk all things LGBTQ plus on the show today. Before we move on, I know we don't have any comments officially on last week's episode, but Mark, I feel like I must share something. Last week we were talking about the Battle of Clack-de-Kelbracht, if you remember, and I said it was the ultimate crossover because it was from Insurrection, Enterprise, Lower Decks, and Deep Space Nine. It wasn't from Way of the Warrior, as I quoted. It was from Blood Oath. I got my episode wrong. Mark, it's been on my mind all week.
Shame.
I've lost so much bragging rights. I can't believe nobody came for me. But yeah, it's been on my mind all week. So I'm issuing a retraction on that little trivia.
Must give up one of your Trexperts titles for that one.
Well, I don't know. What do you think, Davey? Add in the comments. Have I lost my crown?
Lord. Maybe the crown's just a little dinged.
Yeah, the crown is slipping.
Now it's time for All Good World.
From Las Vegas to Boston, USA to Canada and South America, from the United Kingdom to South Africa, from Russia to Australia, the South Pacific and beyond. This is All Good World.
Hey guys, well, today's episode we'd love to give a special shout out to the beautiful country of Brazil. Fun fact, Sao Paulo Gay Pride in Brazil is South America's largest event and is listed by the Guinness Book of World Records as the largest Pride Parade, starting in 2006 with 2.5 million people. It broke the record in 2009 with 4 million attendees, and with similar numbers to at least 2016 and up to 5 million attending in 2017. As of 2019, it has 3 to 5 million each year, and I'm guessing that trend has continued to grow. When I think about Pride myself, and I think about celebrations around the world, the very first thought I had in my mind was, well, they know how to do it down there in Brazil. They really put on quite the show, quite the party. There's celebrities that fly down to participate, be on some of the parades, some Hollywood elites, some famous musicians, but everybody comes down just to celebrate. So,
yeah, wow, that's amazing. Christos, when's Pride in San Diego?
So we in SoCal do it like we're very respectful of everybody's pride. So like right now, West Hollywood Pride is going on, and so there's nothing going on in San Diego. And then I believe we have Long Beach Pride coming up next. San Diego is actually in the middle of July, and and then like Palm Springs does their Pride in November when it's a lot cooler. Same thing. I think Phoenix does theirs in like April, because it's like it's 100+ degrees in some of these areas now, so it's not the best place to be doing Pride. It's kind of cool. We don't have necessarily our Pride Parade is not as millions and millions of people. It's very, very, very well attended, but it does go on for like 4 hours. It's long. It's a really long parade, and it's a lot of fun. So you kind of like get up really early and go like settle in and get your spot. Last year, my buddies and I like nestled in at the front of one of our favorite bars and was able to watch from along the street. So that was perfect.
Is it quite commercial, your Pride? I mean, do you have like businesses with their floats, representing the workforce and brand?
It's funny. I go back and forth with, there's a lot of good companies that do have really good values. And so they, it's like, okay, if they're going to be in the Pride Parade, I mean, it's like, oh, hey, Geico, hey, but they go all out, and, they're throwing their swag and paraphernalia that you're like, oh yeah, I got this. And then you come home and throw it away, which is awful for the environment, but it's a good time. It's a really, Pride in San Diego is more of a 2-weekend event. There's like pre-Pride, and then there's like Pride. And so it's a lot of fun.
Oh yeah. I just want to mention that something that surprises me, I guess I've participated in, I guess a lot of different Pride events throughout the country. I've seen obviously the way Miami does it, and Fort Lauderdale, and then over on the West Coast, Seattle does it, and now I'm back to the East Coast, so Boston. And what has always surprised me is that it's not, Pride isn't just I guess the parades, and specifically the parades. It's not just an event for the gay community to come together. And that's a major part of it, but it is also allyship, and it is a lot of the community as a whole, I guess, giving this platform to the gays and sort of showing their own allyship by showing up and participating. So you have young people and old people, and straight people, and people of all different walks of life participating. And to me, that's what really makes it special, because if it was just us, we would still feel, I guess, isolated. But the fact that you have all of these groups participating, and you've got, young children, coming and participating as well for the first time, and seeing that it's okay to be you and to live an authentically true life, I think that's really important. And I love that year after year, I'm seeing more and more families come and participate. I love that.
Yeah.
I would say we don't, we wouldn't get to hundreds of thousands of people attending our Pride Parade if it wasn't for the allies, of course. So it's big part of it.
Yeah, well, the gays, we know how to throw a party, don't we? So when you get like the straight young teenagers saying that looks like a lot of fun, let's just go and be involved, then that's half of the job done. The fact that they want to spend time with our community and enjoy themselves and see what great fun it is. So yeah, I completely agree. Jumping across the Atlantic here to the UK, Manchester Pride is infamously known to finish the Pride season every year. So Manchester Pride is not until the very end of August. So we've got, even though everybody recognises June as Pride Month, we have a lot of time to wait until we get to ours. And this weekend in London, even though it's not officially London Pride, there is an event on called Mighty Hoopla, which is basically a music festival, but it's pretty much just a warm-up for gay pride. All the gays are there. Manchester is dead this weekend. Nobody's here. Everyone's at Hoopla in London. But Manchester Pride goes on for 4 days. It's over a holiday weekend, whereas most of the prides in the UK are just 1 day. So everybody says Manchester Pride is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
You have to go easy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at 42 years old, it gets harder and harder every year, let me tell you.
It's funny. Like I said earlier, West Hollywood Pride is going on this weekend. So San Diego is pretty scarce. When I was out for a little bit yesterday evening. It's funny because they still they bring in some of the biggest music acts, like Jessie Ware and Grace Jones performed yesterday. It's like people I'd really want to see, but man, the crowds are crazy. And to your point, 42 and 45, I'm like, no. If I don't have the VIP lounge, it ain't happening.
Oh my God, I'm creeping up there at 38, so we'll see.
Wow. Okay, well, we said it was a very special episode today. So this week, if you've not already guessed, we would like to invite you to our annual Pride Party here at All Good Things. So it's a celebration of LGBTQI plus representation in Star Trek. And as you may be aware, Star Trek has had a little bit of a troubled past with queer representation. So what better month than Pride Month itself to take a look at Star Trek, how it's portrayed characters, storylines, and themes for our community. And I think we need to point out as well that everybody's favorite ally, Amy Nelson, she's not been excluded from today's episode. It's not just the gays on purpose. Amy is partying still in Mexico, I believe. So she's having a little pride of her own. Yeah.
This thing happens when Amy finishes the school year. It's like, woohoo. In fact, I think last summer, Mark and I co-hosted, just us, many episodes of All Good Things throughout the summer as Amy's out partying. So good on to her for that, because
she's worked hard for it. So enjoy it, Amy.
Yes.
Any good focus on a topic? Shall we start with the history? As I said, there is a little bit of a troubled history with LGBTQ plus representation in Star Trek. And it's not until what we would really consider new Trek that we've really been represented. So what do we think about that? How did it make you feel as a kid growing up who was so in love with this franchise and these shows, but you just didn't see yourself in the shows? Did you have any thoughts on that, Christos? How did you feel?
I mean, it was not just Trek. It was a lot of television. So I was quite used to that. Most times whenever you saw, when I was, 10, 15, those years of 10 to 15, which let's see, that was the TNG was on, most times, anytime you saw a gay or homosexual on television, it was really the butt of the joke type character, super flamboyant, really there for laughs. You're laughing at them, not with them. It's more making fun of in a way. So in some ways, I'm kind of okay with the fact that we didn't have that then. It would have been nice, but I feel like Trek has been on an evolution with its queer representation, and it's taken us a while to get there. I guess it's not right, but a lot of things weren't right at that time. A lot of things weren't right, So anyways.
I thought you were going to quote Whitney Houston then, say it's not right, but it's okay.
I'm gonna make it anyway.
Don't sing. We'll have to pay the royalties.
So yeah, I guess it wasn't something particularly that I thought of at that young age of being weird, because as Christos said, it wasn't anywhere. So to specifically be like, well, Trek should have it, I kind of got it at that age, because I was still at the point in my life's journey where I was like thinking that it was wrong because everybody was telling me that it was wrong, and everybody was telling me that it shouldn't be, something to aspire for, So I, at that point, I got it. But in the background, as I've gotten older and I've, learned more about the history of Trek in general, and, learning that even Gene Roddenberry back in the 50s wanted there to be queer representation, but wasn't allowed. And he was barely allowed to have any kind of racial representation or representation of women on the bridge. He had to fight for those battles. So it was just one other battle that he just wasn't going to win. So it didn't show up there. And I guess that it is a little odd that when it was getting redone for the 90s, it wasn't a thing, because at that point, especially in the 80s and early 90s, we did start to see gay characters. Now, there weren't a lot, but even if you remember, I think the very first episode of Golden Girls, they had like a gay character that was their houseman person. And so they could have pushed it. They could have pushed it.
But I hear you. But to my point, Coco on the pilot of the Golden Girls was super flamboyant and, the butt of Sophia's jokes, and, and I can see why they altered it out, because it wouldn't make sense that three women who have to be roommates because they barely have enough money to pay the bills could afford a full-time live-in cook / housekeeper.
Love it. It's really interesting that we all feel the same way, as adults. And especially in the days of social media now, everybody's very quick to become enraged about the wrongs of society. And looking back, and how great it is for children to see positive role models. We didn't have that, and we're okay. We grew up better. We've changed things that, people out there who grew up like us have made that change. But at the time, it didn't really bother us. Thinking back, as a closeted teen, if I was sat watching Deep Space Nine with my dad and suddenly, two gay characters started snogging on screen, I'd have died inside. I'd have felt so exposed. I wasn't ready to come out, and I wouldn't really have wanted Star Trek to be like Queer as Folk. That's something I watched in my bedroom with the sound down low in case my parents walked in. So it's almost a careful what you wish for argument in that sense. It was very much a safe space for me.
And it could be easily that, parents could have had an adverse reaction to that character on screen, which, right or wrong, could send wrong signals to a kid. Hey, well, obviously I know where my parents stand on this topic, and, or hopefully it would be just the opposite of that, and it would be more like, oh, whatever. It wouldn't be a big deal. But
I would say that we did get the messages and the stories and the information delivered to us in a way that was more palatable for audiences of the time. So, in spite of not having like a lot of gay representation in Trek at the time, we did have characters that sort of represented that gay character. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I'm going to now, I guess. But Data himself isn't exactly a straight character. He is just an android. So he could have, with his sexuality, kind of gone anywhere.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, and I'm thinking with Lal as well in the episode The Offspring. I mean, and I know sexuality and gender are different things altogether, but that kind of conversation about Lal being able to choose gender and it be an exploration. So I see what you mean with Data.
Yeah. And we did have characters like Jadzia Dax, like Garrick, like even Seven, because, and I'm going to bring Seven up later, but her journey discovering who she is, let's face it,
Yeah,
we all had to go through that same journey in our lives based, around sexuality.
So it's always very much acknowledged there were no gays in Star Trek back in the day. But when we do have a closer look at Berman era, there are those moments that you kind of just brought up, Mark, that I was going to say clinged on to, sorry, no pun intended, latch on to. So thinking like the DS9 episode Rejoined, that's always a much celebrated episode. And even the Mirror Universe episodes of Deep Space Nine, in crossover in season 2, there was this hint of the Intendant kind of doing whatever she wants, quite bisexual. But when you get to the Emperor's New Cloak in season 7, it was in your face. Esri Dax in the Mirror Universe was a lesbian.
But see, that is problematic to me. So the only time queer people exist is in this perverted mirror universe.
The evil universe.
The evil universe, exactly. So it's okay to be gay because it's evil. And I don't think that actually has aged very well in that sense, because it's it's the only time we feel comfortable and safe showing queer representation is when it's evil. So
I prefer to look at it as those characters in the Prime universe would also be fluid. It's just not shown that way, because you got to think that they are essentially the same person, just with different experiences. So I would think that their Prime counterparts would also be that fluid. Maybe the writers just didn't show that, but I would think they would be, just in my head canon.
Yeah.
And do you actually think that is an evolutionary step then in humans in terms of sexuality? Do you think people will evolve to be more fluid?
I don't have any doubt in my mind that in 100 years sexuality is going to be so much more fluid, and there'll be so much more gray areas, and it's not going to be as black and white as it is today.
Not to get too explicit or anything like that, one thing I've noticed in my 25 plus years as an adult, when we were younger, if a straight guy thought he was being hit on by a gay guy, it was the biggest insult. That three-letter F word would come out. Potentially could get violent. Now you're hearing stories about guys that, hey, if they get a little fun with the guy here or there, hey, it doesn't hurt anything. You know what I mean? Whatever. You know what I mean? I'm trying not to say too much. It's just
and even straight guys will joke if they're in company with gay guys, and they're talking about he's hot, he's fit, and they'll say what? Well, does nobody fancy me? I get a lot of that kind of behavior. Almost, it's a badge of honor for them to be pursued.
Yeah, it's no longer a threatening thing, because being gay or being perceived as gay is no longer a bad thing. So the machismo, that wall there, has been kind of let down quite a bit, I've noticed. And and you see now in our bars and whatnot here in Hillcrest in San Diego, you will see the occasional straight guy in there with a gal or with whatever. They're not bothered to be in there, whereas 20 years ago that would be a whole nother story.
I just was talking to a friend recently, and who's a straight man, and he went to a gay bar for the first time with his wife, I guess a few months back, and I guess a gay guy had this may be problematic for some, but had kind of tweaked him on the butt. He's and it happens. It's at a gay bar. People are drinking, whatever. Especially I don't know, for me growing up, when I first started going to gay bars, that's what happened normally. I don't know. Now I guess it's problematic, but I'm used to it. Anyway. And I was like, oh, I'm sorry you had that experience. And I started apologizing, and he started laughing, and I'm like, what? And he's like, no, it's fine. He's like, I got to expect that type of thing. And I took it as a compliment. I thought, it was totally cool that some guy thought I was attractive. And I was like, oh, well, that's a, evolved way to look at it. So
Yeah, I love it. And kind of bringing the history back into the present, or shall we say the future. So you consider New Trek, and obviously Discovery came on with main cast members openly identifying as gay. And we've got all the new series and a lot of kind of diversity and kind of genderqueer almost representation within even Lower Decks. Do you think Star Trek of now got it right? Are they righting a wrong? Is it the right balance? What are we feeling about the representation in New Trek? Mark, you're shaking your head. Do you want to go first?
yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's been a tidal wave and we're all drowning. Like, I'm in the queer community and I'm just like, really? Do we need every single character now to be gay? Maybe people are saying, oh, well, it balances out the last 50 years of Trek where it wasn't that way. But in my head, I'm like, well, I mean, it's nice that there is more when there is more of a balance, when there's a few characters that are and there's a few characters that aren't, and they all get along. It's nice to see that, rather than let's have every single character be somewhere on the queer spectrum. I don't know.
It's a very polarizing opinion that I know it does spark a lot of very healthy debate. What do you think about it, Christos?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Mark, and I believe we may have talked about this before, maybe over on What's the Tea, Bev. I think I've had this conversation a few times, but particularly Discovery has become really, really, really in your face, and it's, I feel like there's more queer representation than, straight representation on the show. And some people I hear are very, very, very activist type about it. Oh, well, we're just getting what's ours. And I'm like, well, that's not necessarily true. When you go out into the real world, we're not more than 50% of the population. So, it doesn't balance quite right. And to Mark's point, it really is a little in your face. And sometimes I wish we were just there and doing our jobs and being seen as normal people who can, contribute, not be about like, you take this in your face. And I think it's a little too much and it alienates. I just want people to see that I'm a normal, capable person and I'm here.
I think it's been to the detriment of the stories they're trying to tell, that they keep, shoehorn this in there week after week after week. It's like, you only got 10 episodes. Why spend every single one of them on the soapbox of look, we're gay, we're in space. Okay, great. I think that they have gotten, at least with Strange New Worlds, from what I've seen, it's more of a, they're just there and they're doing their jobs. And, even with Picard, they had some, non-binary representation, and there wasn't a discussion about it in an episode about it. They just existed and they were,
present,
doing their job. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I think to finish off, I know Discovery does get a little bit of bashing for this, but Lower Decks, Picard, they've got it right, and they're the most up-to-date shows. I'm not going to talk too much about the character because she's coming up later on, but Raffi, it's just a small part of her character. So, and even Mariner, the relationship with Jen, it didn't seem forced or shocked. It's just she's having a relationship with Jennifer. It was no more a big deal that she was a lesbian than she was an Andorian, let's face it, and as it should be. So let's move into the next of our topics. What I wanted to bring us together and just talk about, because we've really had to go looking for these themes in our Trek, the Berman era back in the day, and even some of the newer ones. So I just wanted to start off by having each of us pick a favorite queer character within Star Trek, what they mean to us, and why they were a little favorite pick. So I'll hand over to you, Christos, because sorry, I did almost steal your thunder a little bit there.
Yes, my favorite queer character, I'm going to say, is Raffi. And it was funny. I've never actually had to think about this before. Listeners, Kelvin kind of put this out to the host yesterday. And I'm like, I don't ever really think about this. I just have my characters, right? But I do adore Rafi, period, regardless of her being queer. And I liked her character all through season 1 of Picard before they kind of revealed in the final scenes of season 1 that she is queer. I like her because she's Rafi and she's a tough person, and being queer isn't all that she is. And she is her own person, and that's just one of the many facets of it. And I also like the fact that, it maybe kind of explains her failed marriage in some ways. I know if you've read Last Best Hope, you get a lot of background into her marriage and her neglecting her family, but maybe she wasn't completely into her husband, and it was like it made it easier to be away. It kind of actually, if you kind of can project that backstory there, it kind of links up a little bit with Jay, I think is her husband's name.
Yes.
But yeah, it makes sense. And like I said, I just love Raffi, and I love that in or out of a relationship, single or not, she's just an awesome character, an awesome person, and played by an awesome actress. But it doesn't, her sexuality doesn't define her, and that's what I love most about it.
Do you think with Raffi though, the character is more like work comes first, and that was the detriment to the relationship? Because you could almost argue that was a little bit with 7 of 9 as well. That kind of
workaholic.
Worked at them in opposite directions, and that was the end of the story. How Worf kind of stepped in a little bit and brought her family back together a little bit. So yeah, maybe she's just a workaholic as opposed to stop fancying her husband.
She's definitely committed to her career. Definitely.
Well, just on Raffi here, as you guys were talking, I was just thinking about the two different ways that we have these two different characters, the way that they're written. So we have Raffi and Michael Burnham. And I want to talk about the both of them because they're both women. They're both, Black women. And we have, Michael Burnham, who's been accused of just being just all emo all the time, or vacillates between emo and action hero. But I think with Raffi, you get a little bit more nuance to the performance, where she can be a badass, but then she can also have these intimate moments. I think it's more grounded in like a real place.
Yeah.
And I've watched every season of Discovery, and I've been along the journey with Michael Burnham, and I think it's a fantastic show. And Sonequa Martin Green has been so kind and loving to, especially the gay community, but definitely the whole Trek community as a whole. So I don't want to, to sound like I'm punching down on Sonequa or that, but I just feel like the way the characters were written maybe is different, not the way that they're performed.
Yeah, Michael Burnham doesn't have the vulnerability in the writing that Raffi does, and I'm a big believer in this in all relationships, that if you show your vulnerabilities, then you are a much likable person, because it shows that you're not perfect and you're flawed. So Raffi had that in abundance. So the strength and the vulnerability and the great acting, it just really made her such a sensation. Who's next? Mark, who's your pick?
Well, I just assumed everybody was going to pick Garrick, so I picked somebody else. Literally, I was like, oh, somebody's going to get Garrick. So I went with 7. And I went with 7 because I think, this is true for a lot of people who viewed that character as someone that they could relate to if you were, queer in the 90s, because here's this person that is sort of learning from society who they are, more so than looking into themselves and discovering who they are. There was a whole lot of that. She was being told, oh, well, this is the type of person you should be dating, so let's show you how to do that. And she didn't know any better. Now, I'm, from Northern Maine. I mentioned that many times. I didn't have anybody around to really explain to me what a gay relationship should be like, or a healthy gay relationship. And so without that, and that's true for a lot of people, without those I guess those people that you're have in your life, you're going to sort of be directed in this one direction. I think that's what happened sort of with her and Chakotay. It's like, oh, she didn't know any different and didn't know what she liked yet. She was learning who she was on the show. And I think what had happened, I guess, in my headcanon, is that after the show ended, she started discovering that maybe that wasn't what she was interested in and went a different direction. I don't think it breaks canon at all.
No.
And it's great to see that this background history that was created by the fans, really, because fans have talked about it for years, of the fact that Seven seemed like a queer character to a lot of people. Here the writers are listening and they're like, ha, we get you. Yes, we hear you, we see you, it does make sense. Okay, here you go. And they started writing her that way for the new series. And it's beautiful. They did that with Picard so well, where they took the feedback from the fans that have been holding the torch for this franchise for decades and started, listening. So
yeah. When you think about it, we only saw 4 years of Seven on Voyager, and that's only 4 years of that journey of going from Borg to regaining her humanity. So add on another, when the Voyager got home in 2001, at literally almost 20 years between that and Picard. Yes, she's going to have changed a lot. And it was more than just the queer. I mean, Seven is a lot different in Picard than she was when we last saw her.
The way she speaks is different. And Jerry speaks about that, why she did it.
Her attitude, she's a lot more, grounded, a lot more sure of herself, a lot more opinionated. So yeah, in many ways, the Voyager years are like childhood in ways, just relearning, humanity and whatnot. So we get a much more evolved Seven, and so you're right. Her trying to be in a relationship with Chakotay can be very much like schoolgirl crush type stuff. You know what I mean? Like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
haven't we all, or most of us, experienced that? I mean, I dated women.
Me too.
I think that was the point I was trying to make, is exactly, we kind of do first and foremost, we kind of do, I don't want to say it's expected of us, because I don't want to say that to what's expected in, the 24th century, but, or 25th century, but, I feel like she definitely kind of got past that adolescent type feeling and got to her fully formed adult self.
Seven was a great example back in Voyager of a queer character, was almost, just being such a fan favorite of the gays, being a character who was different from everybody else's because of her experience, and the outsider learning about humanity kind of allowed us to identify with Seven as people who also don't fit into mainstream, and sometimes we just kind of look at things a little bit more critical. But the fact she was so smart, so sexy, so popular, it was a great reason for us to love the character. It's interesting what you've just said, Mark, actually, because it's made me think quite critically. I don't think I've actually said this before, but my favorite episode of Voyager is very surprising. It's Someone to Watch Over Me, which is the Seven Learning to Date episode with the Doctor. It's not sci-fi. It's actually based on a very old-fashioned book, but I just find it such a sweet episode and great acting from Jerry and Bob, and it has been my favorite. But looking at it now through a 2023 lens, the Doctor taught Seven, this is how you date, and the fortress Ovum is besieged with little warriors, or the spur. We went straight into the procreation route of why we have sex, and there was no kind of option, if you like. There was no. But some people are attracted to different gender. We talked.
Dr. Zimmerman was a little bit of a, we saw his personality, right? So some of that would be in the Doctor, right, where he's kind of a lady chaser.
Oh,
and
I suppose
whatnot.
so. Yeah.
So some of those ways are going to be maybe more influenced from his creator.
Yeah.
It's almost like the scan they did of Rios on the La Serena, where they scanned him to create all of these different variant holograms, but they're all based on the one Cristobal Rios. So in my head canon, it works with the same Dr. Zimmerman. They scanned him. They used him as like the archetype for this.
Never thought of that.
Guy.
I mean, we gave Dr. Zimmerman what for, didn't we, when we were talking about Dr. Bashir, I presume, about what a lechy womanizer he is with Lita. Yeah. So yeah, I suppose that did go through to the EMH.
And the Doctor did have a crush on Seven, so
true,
right?
True.
So there's going to be some influence there too.
But just even in the holodeck scene where he explains, here we see two Bolians getting to know each other, and species 8472 have as many as 6 genders. So there was a lot of trying to widen the subject. But then there's the scene 7 goes into astrometrics, and she's looking at a crew manifest to choose the first date, and it's just all men on the list. So yeah, I suppose I've now got problems with my favorite episode of Voyager in hindsight, but I guess all worked out well for 7. So yeah, what a fabulous opportunity that we've now got to have our next, hopefully, Star Trek show with a gay captain. Woo!
And a gay first officer.
Indeed. Well, that might be a problem in itself. That's a workplace romance that will be frowned upon, I'm sure.
Do you know how much stuff's going to get done on that show? I mean, you got 2 lesbians in charge. I mean,
I'm going to finish off with characters to give Discovery some love, and I want to talk about Dr. Culber. Clearly, it was the first, let's talk equal first with Stamets, actual gay character in Star Trek with a gay actor playing. So why did I choose him? I'm going to get the obvious out of the way straight away. He's a beautiful man. And it was great that the character we've been waiting for representation on screen walks on, and he's the hunk of the show. So that was very much not lost on me. But I like the fact that he was introduced as pretty much a guest star for season 1, in the same way that the security officer on Discovery, the name's forgot, how she just got killed off.
The first one or the second?
Yeah. Ellen, I forgot her surname, but she died in both the Mirror Universe and Prime. Ripper got her. But they brought someone in, introduced them, and then killed them off. So that was the idea with Culber as well, to make the kind of when he had his neck broke towards the end of season 1 and died. It was just supposed to be tragic. But the popularity of the character, the popularity of Wilson Cruz, required Discovery to find that convoluted storyline to bring him back in season 2. And he became a main character. Discovery arguably did it with a lot of others. They had the core cast of Burnham, Stamets, Tilly, and then kind of the extra layer of characters, of which Culber became one of them. So the popularity was great, and it was great to see him become front and center and have some great storylines. But I liked a lot of those relationship moments early on in season 1, season 2 with Culber and Stamets. The toothbrushing scene where they're in the little Starfleet pajamas was so sweet. I'm still enraged that you can't get that cosplay, because I'd love to do that with James. It'd be a great photo op.
That is by far one of my favorite moments in all of Trek.
Yeah. It's not political. There's no message there. It's just a couple having a lovely chat in the quarters, getting ready for bed. In the same way that you get that with Dax and Worf in Change of Heart, where they're talking about, setting the alarm for the morning, and are you going to do that diagnostic? Because I wanted to do something with the sensors, and, those kind of, dare I say in inverted commas, normal conversations that you have with your partner. So that was great to be seen on Discovery without that being the gay, That wasn't the story. It was just a couple going to bed.
It was beautiful.
And on top on top of that, they weren't like shirtless or anything like that. There was no trying to sexualize the scene. It was just a conversation.
Yeah.
So it doesn't distract. I will say, the writers of Discovery have said it was always the intention to bring back Culber. I don't necessarily buy that.
I don't believe that.
And it was beyond problematic when they killed Culber, because that is a trope that happens in a lot of TV shows and movies where the gay character dies or a gay character gets killed, and it's to the point where it was too much. And there was a bunch of, of course, if you get a gay character and you're going to kill him in episode 6, and that was very, very, very problematic. So I almost feel it was backlash that got him brought back, not popularity. I think that's a better, and then, like I said, comes the story. Oh, he was always meant to come back. We knew what we were doing. And I'm like, did you? So yeah, I don't want to,
then why do it to begin with?
Well, I know.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have just hurt him really bad and had him end up in the bio bed and he's on life support for, a few episodes or whatever, instead of he actually died and let's bring him back from the dead, a la like Spock,
I guess Discovery really hadn't decided what they wanted to do with sickbay, because you have Dr. Pollard and you have Dr. Culber, and they never really revealed who was chief medical officer.
CMO,
so they probably thought, well, we could kill one of the medical staff because we've got the other doctor who will take center stage. But clearly there was the popularity. Can I just say that character's come back to me? It was Commander Landry, the security officer.
Ellen Landry.
Ellen Landry.
From Battlestar Galactica.
That's the one. Sorry.
And
I know that Cylon.
Yeah, she was a Cylon in BSG, and I hated her in BSG. I hated her in Discovery, but that actress is phenomenal. I follow her on Twitter. As a person, I totally love her.
Yeah, and she should also have been brought back, but when they brought her back in the Mirror Universe, they killed her there as well. So sorry about that. So yeah, there's I do have some problems with Culber. In season 3, season 4 of Discovery, with what I kind of see as a forced family with Adira and Gray. I think that happened too quickly, and I didn't need that to be a storyline. I don't mind the fact that they're together in a unit, but it became the story. But what I do like about Culber in the latter seasons of Discovery is this kind of transition to the therapist almost. And he's a nice guy and people will talk to him. He wants to do well. I think for someone going into the 32nd century and your discipline-based subject, you're still expected to be a practicing doctor is problematic, because that's like bringing a caveman to us and sending them out to work, So I think he might have been out of touch a little. But the therapy aspect of the character, I enjoyed that. I thought it was a good evolution for him.
So, question. When did he find time to go get a second degree, so to speak? Or second, I mean, that's not just like he's moonlighting as the, psychiatrist. He's basically now Crusher and Troy, in one. And is he a medical doctor or is he, a psychiatrist? And I feel like, a lot's happened to this guy. He was a medical doctor. He died. They're out there saving the universe in different centuries. They jump to the future. The future is bleak. When does he find the time to suddenly have this whole separate skill set? It's almost like, it's kind of boring as a doctor. We don't show a whole lot in sickbay. Let's give him something more interesting to do.
I'll give you that. But it's the technical subject that you kind of just have to acknowledge. Even the counseling sessions were just, you've got this, you're great. That's not very realistic either, but I like what they tried to do. And I will just finish off Wilson Cruz by saying, or Dr. Cruz by saying,
Wilson Cruz.
I will also finish off Wilson Cruz. There you go. There's another edit. What an absolute treat at conventions for the fans. He, even during the pandemic, I shouldn't really out him by saying this, he would give people hugs. He was lovely. And he was great on the cruise last year when he was there. So yeah, more. I hope his final season, bless, is going to be a good one.
You never know. He's probably going to be one that you'll see in the Academy show.
So I also thought it would be really interesting for us to choose a favorite episode. And as we've said, LGBTQ plus representation back in the day was always through similes or, a hint at a subject that was kind of glossed over without directly representing it or referencing it, I should say, a metaphor. So,
Coded.
Yeah, that's the one. So, Christos, start us off. What have you picked?
Well, I'm not going to call it queer themed. I'm just going to call it my favorite representation episode. And it's actually a movie. I'm going with 2016's Star Trek Beyond, in which we saw Sulu having a family, having a husband and a child, and it wasn't in your face. It was quite normal. And in fact, I believe like the insinuation was that, Kirk was a little jealous of his family unit and, the fact that he had this to go to. And, I just liked that was there. It wasn't in your face. It was so subtle that people debate, well, they did that on purpose because in Asian audiences that would not go over well. So you could think that was his brother, or something, but I don't go there. In fact, even they deliberately said that he was gay. And interestingly enough, George Takei took offense to it. He didn't think that he needed to didn't change Sulu that way, but I think it fits. I think it's just nice to see. It was a pleasant surprise. It put a smile on my face because it's kind of back to the same reasons I picked Rafi. It just was there. It wasn't like, oh my God, this is, it's not the story. It's not what it's about. It's just there and showing that we exist.
And his daughter is already canon. It was already a thing. Sulu having a daughter, and so we got to see her as a little girl.
Yeah,
and we had never seen Sulu's spouse, so why not have it be a man? I don't know. I actually am glad you picked that Star Trek Beyond because I was going to as well, Christos. So cool.
It's such a shame George Takei didn't approve, and he wanted an original character because he said it was retcon. But for something that is such a homage, even to George himself being gay as the actor playing the character, for it not to have landed with him personally is such a shame. But it's a nice little moment. Great pick. Love it. What's your pick, Mark?
Well, it was tough. It was tough finding favorite queer themed episodes. There have been a number throughout Trek, even in the 90s and early aughts. There's been, queer themed episodes, but I think we keep going. Christos and I keep going back to the well with this idea of it not being a thing. And I love that Lower Decks, I think, did it first and did it best. And by first, what I mean is it's the first time where we are seeing the relationship budding and the dates happening and stuff, because Culber and Stamets, they were already together, right? We didn't see them get together. We didn't see their initial hangouts with, friends and family members and stuff. But here in Lower Decks, you have this very normal thing that happens if relationships are starting, with people going on dates, starting to meet friends, starting to participate. Wait, how do I behave? And maybe, straight people can see this and also relate to it. Like, oh, maybe it's two female characters, but I've been in that situation, and this is just what we need to see more of this totally normal thing, but it just happens to be two, same-sex people.
So for the record, Matt, you're referencing the Hear All Trust Nothing, the Deep Space Nine episode.
Yes, yeah,
Right.
Hear All Trust Nothing, where they go to Deep Space Nine, and it's Jennifer and Mariner. Now, also something that I noticed in this episode, the duality of that with what was happening with Tendi, and I don't know what the guy's name was, but the Orion. That entire conversation was also about identity and, who they are. And you have Tendi, running away from who she is and being faced with somebody that's totally embracing who he thinks he should be. and her learning more about herself and her culture because of this other character, and embracing that. And that's what ends up, helping her save the day, is by embracing, kind of who she is. And I think that's the theme of the episode. So on 2 levels, it's a cool episode for that.
Love it. My pick, I was really struggling because there are some really great moments. I was going to pick TNG's The Outcast, but I know obviously that's been done to death, probably on Galaxy Class. I was going to talk about Enterprise Stigma, but I don't know. I didn't think that would be a particularly uplifting topic. So I've gone for Deep Space Nine's Chimera, which is season 7. Which is the episode where Lars the Changeling, played by J.G. Hertzler, comes to DS9, and he's with Odo, and Odo feels very exposed in front of all of the solids that Lars is just being a true, authentic changeling and doesn't understand why you're not supposed to change form in public. And as we've mentioned, back in whatever year that was, 1999, 2000, I'd just come out. I'd literally just come out. I'd just moved to university, but I had not really got any gay friends by this point. So I was the gay one in the group, very much accepted, very much celebrated, but I was the novelty, and I was with all my straight friends. So I really identified with Odo in that episode. And there's a line of dialogue that says, Lars says to Odo, "What higher form of flattery is there? You who can be anything is choosing to be like them." So whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in a group of friends, that you're not really wanting to advertise your culture, your gayness, by wanting to fit in with your straight friends. It really resonated with Odo. And even the line Quark says in that episode of, "We're at war with your people. This is no time for a changeling pride demonstration on the promenade." I just thought it was beautiful. So it's a very understated gay episode, but it's great character development for Odo. And yeah, I just really saw myself in that episode.
What a cool line.
Yeah, it is. It kind of gets into this thing too. It's like, the 3 of us are kind of very similar in age. I think there's 7 years between us, oldest and youngest. But, so there's like our generation, and then there's this younger generation of queer, gay, whatever. And I see that in the workplace. It's like part of me is like learn to adapt and to put part of myself on a shelf when I'm out at the office and tone it down, and I don't know if that's right or wrong, because I see younger folks coming in and they just do whatever, and they're a lot more out there with the way they dress, the way they act, and you're like, part of you's like, well, tone it down, and part of you's like, well, maybe this is what you fought for. This is what you spending all these years at the office, getting acceptance,
maybe a bit of jealousy.
It is. I will say, I mean, I've said it before. It's like, I wish I had it as easy as some of these kids have it now, because they are figuring things out for themselves much, much earlier, and they're not being bullied on the level in some areas, in some cases, that, others have been, and they are, more free to be who they are at a much younger age. And that's awesome. I guess I don't want to use the word jealousy. I think I'm envious, but it's also a little gratifying that maybe at some small level I was part of the hard work that was done to pave the way for that.
I think that's a healthy way of looking at it. You helped create that environment where they could be like that.
Yeah.
Fab. Okay, so our final topic is a bit of fun. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. So I wanted to offer the opportunity for us to maybe tweak or judge a little bit of a historic moment within Star Trek and rewrite it to make it a bit more gay, or maybe something that didn't sat with us, or a missed opportunity. So, Christos, what have you picked?
Yeah, I like the word the zhuzh. That's definitely what this is. So I've picked the episode "The Host" from Star Trek: The Next Generation, season 4, which is also our first time we see the Trill. And it's a Crusher love episode, as many of you remember. And even Gates McFadden has been quite out there at, this episode hasn't aged well in some cases. And I ask myself, has it? Because people are like, if we recall, Crusher is with Odan, and Odan is a Trill, and Crusher nobody knows that he's a Trill. He's just a humanoid male, as far as we know. And then, of course, there's an accident, and then the Trill and Crusher has to take the Trill out, the symbiont out of Odan's, and put the Trill into Riker. And then, Riker is a temporary carrier. And for the most part, and this is something that already got retconned in Star Trek, pretty much Odan is still Odan. It's not like Trill, how we see Dax having all these different, where the Dax personality is only part of the actual host.
Yeah.
So it's already been judged by Star Trek with Jadzia Dax. And then Riker's temporary Trill is taken out, and Odan is put in a female. And so Crusher carried on her physical relationship with Riker, but she could not bring herself to have a physical relationship with the female at the end. And that is already something that got retconned also in Star Trek, where as hosts, you're not allowed to keep carrying on with prior love interests. We saw that. There's a whole episode about that with Dax. So there's already been a major retcons have already happened to this episode within Star Trek. So kind of want to point that out. But I really wish, it was a little bit better stated with Crusher, because I, for one, the difference between me loving another man and wanting to have a physical relationship is who I am sexually, how I identify. If I were to have an intimate relationship on that level with a woman, that would be more of a platonic relationship. And I don't think that they did a good enough job framing it that way for Crusher's character. And she's kind of made to look the bad. And, it's the same, and she kind of says it, like, I'm not capable of doing this. Like, you know what? I'm not capable of falling in love with a woman and having a physical relationship with her on that level. I pretty much know that at 45, folks. And so Crusher knowing that about herself, it was the right thing, but I think it should have been stated a little better. Like, hey, I can be your best friend, but I can't be your lover, and, I think that's the way it should have, been. Like I said, maybe it's a weird episode to pick anyway, because it already has been retconned to death in DS9. But
yeah. Is it a choice because almost it's a Crusher flaw almost that you're trying to, and that just delivery of that end line where she says, I can't keep up with these changes.
Yeah.
If the script changed a tiny bit, that's what you're judging.
Yeah, I'm judging the way Crusher looks in that, because I don't think it portrays her as, some people have said that's like, somehow, like a homophobic or something like that. I've heard those allegories to that scene. Like, no, I think, and like I said, even Gates McFadden, even in recent times, has tried to defend that and smooth it over a little bit, talking about it on Twitter and at cons and things like that. I just feel like, I think it is a really good thing of showing we can't change, there is a physical component to who we are sexually, and you can't just change that, for somebody, and I think that's, I could meet the best woman in the world. As gay men, we probably have all had that female, oh, why can't you be straight? We've all, I'm sure we've all had that. And I think it's kind of the same thing, it's like, no, I can't change who I am because you love me like that, or you're attracted to me,
I mean, this might be a bit deep, Christos, but what if you were in a long-term relationship with a guy who then transitioned and became a woman legally, and kind of, in every other way? So could you have a relationship could you continue a relationship with a trans woman?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard, isn't it?
Well, it's, because there is a thing called feelings, right?
Yeah, you don't know until you're in that situation.
I'm saying I don't know because I don't want to make an ignorant statement and say yes or no. I think context and feelings play into things, right? You know, so, but, you know, I don't know. I mean, that's a really deep question, and I have a more thorough answer. I'm not sure it's here for prime time, but you know, next time we're on the Star Trek cruise, having a few drinks one evening, bring back that situation.
Right. So there's a late night after hours episode of All Good Things coming on Star Trek the Cruise next year. Come and find us, listeners. We'll be by the bar.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Mark, what's your pick? What are you judging?
Kelvin, I feel like I probably stole your zhuzh. I don't know. But I didn't want this episode to go by without talking about Garak. As I would say, you know, the actor Andrew Robinson had the bravery and the foresight to commit to telling the story from a gay perspective, even though on the page it wasn't written that way. This is what he wanted, and he's a heterosexual man. This is just something that he thought would be right for the character. And so my jujuration here, if you will, would be I would have the Garak and Bashir bromance sort of be explored further than it was, because admittedly, like Dr. Bashir, I feel like is somebody that could potentially go either way. I mean, he even had, you know, his other super close, his two closest relationships were with men, you know, O'Brien and then with Garak. And so on some level, it would make sense to me that he would be a little experimental. And that maybe he wasn't just after Jadzia, but maybe he was like, oh, but here's Garak over here, and Garak's cool, and I like hanging out with Garak. And so it would have been cool if I was rewriting Deep Space Nine to explore that further, maybe his bisexuality, and maybe him and Garak could have had this romance similar to what we saw with Mariner and Jennifer, with them just trying it out, just going on dates, getting to know each other, being intimate, falling asleep on the couch. Those moments, without it being in your face, just these regular people moments. That's really what I wanted to see for the two characters.
Robert has said, I don't know if it's in the documentary What You Leave Behind, but he says it's his number one regret that they just didn't allow Garak to be gay on screen when he clearly is. I don't know where I sit about actually having Garak and Bashir together. I would have preferred it more like the Jadzia Dax Bashir kind of one of them. I would have liked Garak to be chasing Bashir and kind of almost not jokey, that's the wrong word, but almost very, very overtly coming on to him, and maybe even like Bashir just laughing it off a little bit and still having that fabulous relationship that they have. But I think it would have been interesting either way, of whether it was either unrequited love or putting them together. If it was unrequited, it would probably have, stolen the thunder of Odo and Kira's early episodes where Odo was just pining for Kira. So yeah, but very much it's a very popular. I feel like we've just played a game of Garak bingo. It's like, right, who had 1 hour 8 minutes before Garak comes into the Pride episode? So you win, Mark.
Yay.
Yeah,
Christos, what do you think?
Yeah, I maybe to like further double down on the zhuzhing of this one. I mean, I think I always read Garak as gay. I think I would have made Bashir a gay character probably from the get-go, and it would have made sense that he had a relationship with Garak. It didn't.
How much more interesting would it be for us as LGBT members in the 90s to have seen it on screen? Those would have been our characters, and I would have flocked to Deep Space Nine a lot more than I did.
Yeah, I had quite the crush on Dr. Bashir when the show first started in '93, and I was probably a junior in high school, maybe sophomore, junior, whatever. And yeah, it never landed well that he was like this overly chasing Jadzia. It's actually a little creepy at times, and it didn't feel natural. If you go back and watch it, it almost like he feels like a gay guy in denial than he does, and so he's trying to overtly make himself more like, I'm a ladies' man. That's kind of how it reads more now than it does, So I think having him been gay, and then eventually having a relationship with Garrick, and like think of all the things they could have done with that. Like, oh, the conflicts they could have had it cause with his Starfleet. Like you could be potentially, shacking up with a spy, and maybe that's compromising, Starfleet security, or you know what I mean. Like there could have been so many ways to go with that too. And I don't know. The
Section 31 Obsidian Order kind of storylines could have been amazing,
right?
With Bashir and Garrick, the spy couple. Yeah, it would have been great.
I think it's a really good pick, Mark. And like I said, I saw you had this on the list, so I was like, oh, that's good because
it's covered.
It's covered. Yeah.
I'm going to finish off with trying to right a wrong and taking it to Enterprise. 2001. It really should have had a gay character on Enterprise. Regardless, I know we talk about Berman era being like the 80s and the 90s, but Enterprise was in the noughties. It really wasn't a novelty at that point. And I know there's a lot of discussion that they were going to make Malcolm Reed gay. I wouldn't have enjoyed that because I'm not a huge fan in like soap operas, for example, where a character just becomes gay. I understand that in real life, some people don't discover their sexuality until much later in life, and I don't want to exclude those people, but I wouldn't have bought it. I think Malcolm Reed, with all his lusting after T'Pol's bum, and he had the relationships with he was coming on to the Andorian woman, Talas, and he was just a little bit of he was a low level womanizer, and just even knowing Dominic as well, I don't think it would have been I wouldn't have liked it as much as I would have appreciated the representation. So my judge was actually Ensign Mayweather. I think he would have made. I knew that would please you, Mark.
Somebody hold him back.
I know. Travis Mayweather to me was the obvious choice, not only because again a very, very beautiful man, but there was not really any mention of a prior relationship with women. There was no love interest. It wasn't until the penultimate episode, Terra Prime, that the reporter woman showed up who he was like an ex with. All throughout the other runs, there wasn't really any kind of love interest. So it could have made sense from a canon perspective almost.
And it would have also been sort of really good for, and I've learned about this just in the last few years of how much of a struggle it is for Black, queer, nerd representation in television. Like it's almost unseen. And so for there to be this lead in the show and have him be Black and queer and in like a sci-fi show, I think it would have been an extra 1-2 punch of positive energy that would have really helped the show.
Fully agree. And even, now 2023, we've got Doctor Who is coming back as, played by a Black queer actor. And that's really a big step forward for representation there. But not jumping franchises, going back to Enterprise. I just think there was no excuse. I will forgive TNG, DS9, and even Voyager. But Enterprise, I'm quite angry that they hadn't sorted their shit out by that point and given us a gay character. So Travis Mayweather, you're ours. You've been adopted.
Yeah, I agree.
That phaser's just stunning.
No, that would have worked better. And like I said, I did. I think I watched. It was gone into a little deeper in the center seat about Reed potentially being gay. But there's also that trope in America, by the way, and I don't know how you guys perceive it overseas, Kelvin, that you get a skinny British guy or whatever, like Bashir or Reed or whatever, and he's obviously queer, because he's a little bit more effeminate, you know what I mean? And but whereas it's because more so in some cultures, they're not as freaking hung up on machismoism as the U.S. can be. So in our zeitgeist over here, you see a British guy, and of course he's more likely to be gay, or he's, and it's easier to do that. So
we're usually the villain.
Well, that too, which, it's a whole nother trope. But oh yeah. I do think that Mayweather would be like the better choice.
Well, I'm going to have to be the British villain and start to draw this to a close. So, Mark, do you want to tell us where we're going next week?
Do I? Well, next week we are going into the Mirror Universe for Mirror Reflections Part 4, and we are going to be covering Discovery's Terra Firma. Now, both Terra Firma 1 and Terra Firma 2, so it's a double episode watch. I know Amy loves those. I usually don't, but you can't have one without the other. I couldn't just do one of the episodes, so we're going to do both. And I would say, as far as Discovery Mirror Universe episodes, these are the best two, in my humble opinion. So I hope our listeners agree.
A double helping of Michelle Yeoh. What more can you want?
Wow.
I think that's probably the gayest part of this episode. Wonderful. Well, we would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and continue our discussion over there. You can also tweet your thoughts to @AllGoodPod. And please make sure you follow the network on Twitter and Instagram @BQN Podcasts. We've also partnered with our friends at Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching the master feed. So, Christos, where can people find you when you're not holding a Changeling Pride demonstration on the promenade?
You can find me on Facebook in the BQN Collective, as well as on Twitter and Instagram @GreekGeekSD, and also on my other little podcast, What's the Tea, Beb? We should have a new episode for you folks about the time you hear this episode drop. So looking forward to that. And you can also find me at GreekGeekSD on the PlayStation Network playing Star Trek Resurgence. And so, Mark, where can people find you when you're not sneaking on to the NX-01 to chase down our newly queened Mayweather?
Well, when I'm not doing that, now I would love for that transporter malfunction. We could go on away missions together. There's that jelly. I could just help him with the jelly and that. Anyway. What are we talking about? Oh, yeah. Where can people find me? People can find me in the BQN Collective Facebook group. They can also find me to become a patron of the network on Patreon. I host the show It's Green. And, well, it's already out now at the time of this recording, or the time of this episode drops anyway. Cinema Z, it's a new show I'm hosting with Matt Jennings and Laz Marquez, where we discuss some of our favorite films. So hope everybody checks that out. And if you don't find me in all those places, you can find me on Twitter @MarkWhite207. And Kelvin, where can people find you when you are not discussing Cute Boys with Jadzia on the promenade?
Oh, that would be a regular occurrence, believe me. When I'm not doing that, you can find me on Instagram and or Twitter @Kelvin's Timeline, or in the BQN Collective Facebook group, or you can find me on the last weekend of August partying hard at Manchester Pride.
Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and written review. That helps others to find the show. You can also follow the entire network's podcasts with our master feed by searching BQN. This way you won't miss any of our fine shows like Galaxy Class, Infinite Diversity, Union Federation, History with the Szilagys, What's the Tea, Bev, Trexperts Quiz, The Captain's Couch, Bargain Bin Gamer, and Cinema Z, a film discussion and review podcast out now.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. Special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and our very own Mark White for our beautiful artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help us keep our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/PQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us, girls, as we search out
all good things.